Sit down, please.
We're all friends here. We're just here for a conversation.
What a tremendous pleasure it is to be back in the Philippines, first of all, but to be here today for this event. It's something that I and our Minister of Foreign Affairs, Chrystia Freeland, who I think has been chatting with you already, have been very, very excited about, because Canada over the past couple of years has really made a deliberate focus on women's empowerment. And that happens a lot of different ways, whether it's through a Canada Child Benefit that is helping a lot more women with that work-life balance that we know women struggle with far more than men because our society is just that way and still needs to evolve, or whether it's looking at encouraging women to get into science, technology, engineering, and math, and into areas in education that we know are extremely important and advancing, or mostly through women's economic empowerment, through looking at entrepreneurship, looking at reducing barriers for women's success in the workforce, looking at wage gap disparities, looking at how we can ensure that women are successful. And one of the things that we've taken on both at home and around the world is a feminist approach, which I know the word feminist still scares a few people, but it simply means recognizing that men and women are equal and should be equal, and second, that there's still an awful lot of work to do to get there. If you can say yes to both of those things, guess what? You're a feminist. And that approach, particularly when it comes to international engagement, is something that Chrystia and I have been working on very strongly. A feminist approach to foreign policy in general, but very specifically, a feminist approach to international development policy. Because it's not just the right thing to do, which of course obviously it is, but it's also the smart thing to do. We all know that empowering women to be successful is not just a single driver of economic success. It leads to compound effects as the community does better, as the village does better, as the entire economy of the country does better, the more women have pathways to success. And that's why I'm very, very excited today to be joined by these three extraordinary women who will be able to share their story and illuminate me a little bit on the challenges faced here in the Philippines, but also the pathways to solutions. So I'm really looking forward to it. I'm not going to take up more time for an introduction. I want to hear from Jeannie, from Zara, and from Anya, and we're going to get into it. So maybe turn to Jeannie and kick us off.
Mabuhay.
Mabuhay.
That's a Filipino greeting. And
Indeed.
buhay is to be alive. And you just brought us all alive here by being with us. We're very happy that you're here in the Philippines and that all our great women are here to share our wonderful story. You know, the Philippines is the only ASEAN country that has a Magna Carta of women, which already shows you how strong our women are here. And the beauty, I think, here in the Philippines is that private sector and the development agencies, alongside the Canadian grant that has helped us, has formed a very innovative partnership we call Great Women, which is gender-responsive economic action for the transformation of women. Thank you for our phase 2 and what we've done at private sector, and we are represented here by all our women collective members, our Great Women collective members, is the fact that we're coming together and just working it, in your words. You did say that in one of your speeches. We're coming together and we're going to work it. So the donor grant fund that Canada has actually helped us with has managed to create a platform which brings together private sector and government with international aid into a system that allows all our little micro-entrepreneurs to move up the value chain. And it really began with Echo Store, which was one of our brands, and our foundation, which was trying to be able to help our small entrepreneurs have market access. all the way up. And we were realizing this is so hard because none of them knew how to do proper design, proper packaging. So we went to the ground, and that's when we met the Philippine Commission of Women, and together have managed to put this program together. And now the brand that is Great Women, alongside the whole program, is what is trying to lead and bring together not just the private sector, but likewise all the different government agencies. It's beautiful because I think it's a way that everybody has a space to step on in the platform, and that's why we have our women collective members here. And from a retail perspective, we want to be able to touch more women micro-entrepreneurs, and the program has actually helped us with a nationwide reach at this present time.
Oh, that's incredible, and I'd love to dive into some of the stories. So, Anya, why don't you tell us how you came about to create Anthill and the kind of impacts that it has had?
Right. So Anthill actually has been around for a couple of years, around 7 years, and the backstory of that is because there's a huge disparity or gap in the continuity of transmitting culture from the elder generation to the younger generation. Younger women don't really realize or value the importance or relevance of preserving culture anymore. And we wanted it to be more relevant by applying them in contemporary designs. But I guess the biggest impact or the pain point that I saw when I was in the community was that a lot of women, they told us they're mothers first. Even before they're weavers, they're mothers first. It's very important for them to be able to work in the comforts of their own home, but be able to find something that's really sustainable, that's long-term. So currently with our work, we're able to increase the weavers by 50% in terms of our membership, and 50% of those belong to the younger generation. So now they see the relevance of actually practicing the craft because young people also wear our weaves proudly.
And tell me about the impact it's had on the women weavers who are rediscovering their mothers' and grandmothers' culture and also getting a little level of economic independence.
Right, so a lot of the young women right now in the community are, because of our financial literacy program, are able to reinvest their savings into poultry, more businesses. So they're growing their entrepreneurial skill also and putting it into good investments to increase their productivity. In terms of like valuing their culture, they're able to become more effective mothers. They feel like because of the sustainable work or the market access that's continuously provided for them, they're able to increase their skill in terms of product design. They're able to pass it on to their families as well.
Now, Zara, you've got an example of something that is both empowering individuals, but also changing the habits of consumers across the country. Tell us about what you did back in 2007.
Well, I'm basically an entrepreneur. Before I became an entrepreneur, I was a flight attendant. And during my travels, I've seen how people live and how people care for their environment. So I chanced upon the concept of green bags, which I saw in Japan. It's a very good concept. And during that time, it wasn't, the green concept is not big yet in the Philippines. So I went back home during my days off and made my own two pieces of bags. And it started that way. I would talk about my green bags, and people would ask what it's for, and I would continue to explain it to them until it became a full-blast manufacturing company. So we started in 2007, so it's almost 10 years. And we've been very blessed, and for a lot of people, because a lot of people were just so, willing to help, willing to mentor, and would just, be happy to share. And that's why when in our team, in our company, we had this discussion on how are we gonna give back. So basically, as a company, we just thought of, since a lot of people helped us, was not greedy in sharing skills. So we wanted to do it and give back as well. So right now, our company, with the help of the Great Women Project, is just doing mentorship and transfer of skills, meaning to say what we know in manufacturing, we just replicate it with different communities in the Philippines.
Because you've gone far beyond just bags now. I saw shoes out there, and I know you've branched out to a whole range of things that all sorts of people are involved in.
Yes, we try to be as inclusive as we can with all the products that we make.
Now, Jeannie, we're looking at success stories, and your success story is, of course, amazing. But tell me about some of the challenges and the barriers that these women, that all women, or all entrepreneurs for that matter, are facing that can sometimes even be more difficult than women, and how can we work together better to try and reduce those barriers and succeed?
I think we'll need 5 days. However, we will try to cut this really short with the fact that it begins down on the ground, and we were there with the communities, and this was really our way with the Ecosi Foundation and the Eco Store to see how can we bring it to market. It was market access, but they weren't ready for the kinds of market they wanted to be able to do. So the gaps of market readiness and product development into markets and finding the markets that are different from their backyard markets was really key. So the niche and specialty market was something that our very small micro-entrepreneurs did not know. But we who travel and see the world and love looking at nice things, realize that they have such great skill. But how do we translate this? And that was really the beginning of the work. The packaging, the design. Then after that, it was about financial access. And we tried to see how we could be able to bring in different groups and organizations, financial institutions, microfinancing groups, to see how we can develop this direction. When phase 1 ended, and there was no plan at all for Canada to do another phase, it was really just summing up what we had done, and we did not expect it to come, that there would be a second phase. And I think the way private sector has begun to move is that how can we now be able to influence everybody in the private sector to see what are the gaps that we're seeing? Because even if a micro-entrepreneur would need a support, you'll realize that the next level has a different issue. And then the next level of women entrepreneurs have a different issue to those who want to expand. And so the different issues are similar down the line in that, number one, they need financial access. Second is market access. Third is development, business and development skills, which means help in mentoring. How do you strengthen them? And then leadership. And there is a natural evolution here that happens when mentors come together because they're working together, and there is a way of commitment that says we're not letting you go. We're staying on with you till you get it all the way up there. And we have such fantastic success stories with women who before would first come afraid and suddenly now are rising to be leaders amongst their own groups. And I think it's wonderful that the whole program, which is both private sector, public sector, international funding, comes together with a vision and a commitment to not let go. We'll do this together, all together,
Tell me about the difference that this sort of network has made. It seems to me that the mentorship and the support is something that we see more in women's entrepreneurship. Is that an advantage? Does that give you a competitive edge over all the men in business, do you think? Is that something?
I think there's something to learn from the men. There's something to learn from the men. But you see, a lot of women are so busy with their kids and housework and planting in the farms that they don't have the time to network. The men have the time. They have a beer, they'll go have wine, So the thing here is, how do we give these women the space? And they often will do it because of livelihood, so then they come together and mentorships happen. In the Philippines, we have a whole grouping of women organizations now all together to see how can we help, not just through the Great Women Program, but really be able to touch the gaps and look at issues to be able to work the gaps of what women need help, no?
How is technology changing the way you work, whether it's access to capital, access to markets, or new innovative approaches to products that are out there that might, suddenly realize, wow, you've got a niche that you found about that some specific community on the other side of the world really wants more of your products. How is that both an advantage and in some ways an extra challenge?
So in Anthill, it has played such a significant role because we've been actually doing our promotions and our communications and largely our storytelling online. We've been lucky enough to spark a movement of contemporary weavers among our clients. And when they wear something that we make, they proudly post it on Facebook. And social media just does it. Like, it just spreads the fire. And that actually creates influence online. But more than that, it also makes people appreciate how we're able to mesh traditional technology and contemporary design. So in that sense, like, IT has also had such an impact in pushing for appreciation of traditional technology, which is traditional hand weaving. Majority of our sales really come from online, and that just really magnified the power of storytelling.
Sarah?
Actually, technology plays a very big role in how we do things. For example, the women who are doing the beadwork of our shoes, they are down south in Mindanao. It's very far. And I cannot be there all the time. But because there's Viber, WhatsApp, and Messenger, you know, I can see them while they're working, and I'm here in the city. I can see them, and they can talk to me real time. And I can do product approval, and they can tell me what they need. And, you know, there's output every day because of technology. And in terms also of how can we reach them, for example, when we want to pay them with their work, sometimes it's hard to in their area, there are no banks around, but there are money remittances stations around. So it's easier to get the money there. So technology has been really, really helpful to moving things.
I think, however, that we have to see technology also beyond just social media and the linkages it does internationally online. But the technology is also equipment. And what we've managed to do in the whole program is through convergence centers, with the work of government and the different agencies, with the commitment of private sector to say, we need this kind of equipment because the women are ready for it. Everybody comes together to converge. So equipment is technology. Understanding of how this equipment runs is important for the women, because then without this equipment, then they cannot also maximize the production capacities. And even if they use social media, which is already being brought into the whole program through our Women in Tech program, where we have partners in private sector, likewise, to see how we can further generate the use of technology, where our indigenous peoples are throwing us the signs at 12 midnight on Facebook and Messenger, and I think the three of us share this. It's something which empowers them. So we want to bring in as much of technology, not just in their hands, but really in their cooperatives, in the small barangays, and this is where the program supports us tremendously.
Tell me more about sort of the policy side of things. Obviously, government programs specifically that support women entrepreneurship and empowerment can be very impactful. But are you finding an ability to start shifting sort of the economic and political decision makers to understand how important it is to continue to emphasize and develop women's success?
We have the Philippine Women's Entrepreneur Economic Network, which has brought together 6 of the biggest women organizations, very strong women at that. And we're looking at trying to go after what we call the GAD budget in our country. It is in policy that at least 5%, you see everybody knows, huh? 5%, you should say this louder, 5% of all government agencies must go to women-led businesses, programs, or projects. And it's called the Gender and Development. And we're out to push this. So I think with the platform gives us a good voice in being able to do actual translation of the policies into the ground. Because by the work that we've shown together, it is clearly very good impact that comes from that.
There's also been a lot of initiatives from women-led enterprises to push for social procurement, which is something that's really not talked about so much yet in the Philippines. But with model government agencies supporting and allocating their procurement budget to social enterprises and women-led businesses, there's also a level of influence in considering it in policy. So that's pretty powerful too.
I have the same answer with Anya. Yeah.
Well, I mean, this is one thing that we've looked at as well. Making smart decisions around government procurement is a very, very impactful lever to do that. So keep up that push for sure. What other things are coming into? I mean, what kind of an impact are you seeing in the Indigenous communities in terms of social impact as more women are empowered, or in communities across the country?
I think there's two major things there, because our indigenous communities carry the heart and spirit of our whole tribe, our whole culture, and our people. So with the development of the textiles that we do, we need to be able to see how we can develop it with very culture-friendly, sustainable ways, because the global market will eat them up, right? So we're very watchful to see how we can move towards IPs for our tribes, to make sure that the kinds of textiles that they are creating can be different levels so that markets can be reached. But on the same way, there is a leadership angle, because sometimes the tribes are very communal in that space, and the women come out and become leaders, and I think this is where we should be able to support them, because our indigenous women are fantastic. When they rise up and they speak for our culture. So it's important for us to be able to really support our indigenous peoples in the economic side, not just preservation of culture, but how do you make the living tradition, which is slowly changing, how do you make this living tradition sustainable for a lifestyle and a livelihood continuously? That's what we want to be able to work with.
Are you seeing impacts on the next generation already?
Yeah, a lot, especially nowadays. Like, it's not just Anthill who's an active brand that's really applying weaves in contemporary design. So there's an entire movement already, and there's a wave of other brands using the same thing, doing the same thing. But more than that, I think because of that huge attraction to preserving weaving culture, there's also a challenge of continuously innovating our textiles. And so like in Anthill, for example, we've been doing a lot of zero waste innovations and upcycling our weaves and weaving them into new fabrics, just so we make it more relevant for the younger weavers as well. Because for the younger customers, they enjoy wearing it, but we need to give that connection, create that connection as to why the younger weavers have to continue weaving the craft. Yeah.
For me, I'll cite an example. The first time that I went to the community, I was only dealing with the elders. So these are like 50 to 60 years old elders, members of the community. And then the next, after several months of working with them, I saw the interest of the next generation, which are the daughters of the elders. So these are around 20s, 30 years old. And seeing that, it makes a lot of, it's like an achievement in itself, that the second generation is actually taking interest instead of thinking of going out of their community and think of another job. But the greatest achievement happened when during one of our visits, when the younger generation, these are children, who are actually participating and listening to our sharing while we're doing product development. I think it's a good indication that it's working.
I think also that the moment the young are doing it is because the markets have been opened. And markets are open depending on the tastes of what the global and the national needs are. So the development direction we're looking at under the Great Women, especially for our design direction, is that when we do our textiles, for example, we want to be able to keep the documentation of those that are highly rich in our culture, then develop new neo-ethnic designs that our indigenous weavers themselves design with us. There's a difference. It's not just the designers coming in, but our whole lab, which we want to do. Our designers are coming in to design, then weave with us. When it comes to the coffees that we sell, the teas, there should be a standardization, like knowing that our coffee from this tribe is actually handpicked by this woman, becomes itself a standard, which in the international market is really much higher a profit for them. So we want to be able to look at this niche and specialty market, which has always been the same vision we've had since we began with the Eco Store and the Ecosi Foundation, and which we put into the Great Women programs and platform we work with, is that culture will constantly change. How can we keep our people and our indigenous people relevant so that when you have an international market come in, they don't die and they don't disappear, because each and every one of those indigenous tribes has a message to tell and must live and survive. So we work from these spaces where we understand markets. How can we bridge that for them? Because by bridging that, we help ourselves as entrepreneurs, we help them in the social angle, in the economic angle, and at the same time, government sees, oh, this is a good thing to help and support. So we need to know the markets, and you will help us open in Canada these markets.
Excellent.
I am sure.
Well, our half hour together has gone very, very quickly, so I'll turn to final remarks from each of the three of you, and then I'll close it up. So, Anya.
I'm just really very grateful for the support that the Canadian government is giving the Great Women Project, because it really has led to a lot of capacity building programs for the community, which they largely need, considering there's a huge demand for what we do and the great artisanal products in the Philippines. So very honored and very grateful. Thank you.
And thank you for spending time with us. I know it's quite hectic, and at least you get to see these are the real women behind all these projects. And so, thank you.
I would like to say that I'd like to end this visit, very historic for us, because this is also where the Great Women brand was launched. And we want to look forward in that it is beyond the Philippines. We would like to see great women into the ASEAN, because we have interested partners ready. We have international donor funds from other countries fully backing Canada's leadership in this direction, in that we know that the impact we have done in the Philippines is something that can be shared with our ASEAN sisters, and we are going to look forward, Mr. Prime Minister, to the commitment from you and the community that we move it into the ASEAN region.
Now I see why she's such a successful businesswoman. And that actually is exactly the final point I wanted to make, just how this is an extraordinary success that you can all be incredibly proud of. But more than just this success here, it's a model for the world. I mean, we know that everywhere where there is poverty, where there are struggles and challenges, where there's a lack of economic development, one of the best things to do is to empower women, to give them opportunities to contribute, to grow their community, to take care of that next generation, and to build a prosperity that is deep and shared. So this hard work and success that you have modeled here and broken ground on is certainly something that is going to cost the Canadian government a lot of money around the world. But it's, sorry, I went off script there for a second. No, I mean, we have a feminist international development lens, which means when we spend on, or when we invest in economic development around the world, we are looking specifically at the most vulnerable. We are looking at empowering women. And the difference between giving someone a fish and teaching them to fish is what you are showing right here. When you create economic independence, autosufficiency, and prosperity that comes from the skills and the hard work within and not from without, but adding to that from without the international market tools, the technology, and the networking support is really very, very exciting. And I want to thank all three of our panelists here and all of you for the incredible work you've all been doing. Thank you very, very much. Is this what my hair looks like? How wonderful. Thank you. Let's get a picture all together.